What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more 88 Fingers Louie for the first time in a while, and we're going to go back to their Back on the Streets album, which I forget, there was one video where I misstated the year. This was from 1998, and actually the band had broken up a few years earlier. I forget exactly the timeline, but they put out Behind Bars, their first album. I think it's fantastic. They put out, I think it was like a compilation called The Dom Years, when their drummer, I think his name was Dom. There was a split they did with, Kid Dynamite. Basically, they had done a few releases, and then on tour, they ended up breaking up because of some personality conflicts, and they put out a unreleased material plus some live recordings compilation called 88 Fingers Up Your Ass, which I don't know if you can see it. I don't know if it's in frame, but it's right over here. I have reacted to at least a couple tunes from it. And then in the late 90s, they got back together and made an excellent album, also on Hopeless Records, called Back on the Streets. And you can see the guys here, two of whom would go on to be founding members of Rise Against, one of whom is still in the band. Mr. Precision, I think, moved on and is now not involved with Rise Against, but Joe Principe still is. And yes, then they broke up again, and as I understand, it was again because of just some personality conflicts. But in the second half of the 2010s, they came back and they made another album called like So Long and Thanks for All the Tunes or something like that. So yes, they've been a band multiple times over the last 3 or so decades, but with some periods in between where they were on hiatus because of, as I said, to the best of my understanding, personality conflicts. In any case, this is maybe my favorite album of theirs. I think it is a more mature sound relative to Behind Bars, and I think some of the tunes have some really good messages. I know I already react to Punk Rock Rulebook, one of my favorite tunes, because it casts a critical mirror on the more dogmatic people within the punk rock scene in terms of what can be considered punk rock and what it means to make a living making punk rock and so on. We're going to listen to the opening tune on the album called Tomorrow Starts Today, which is as forward-looking as it sounds, though it is also describing what has come and why the narrator is not going to think about this other person and what they used to be anymore. He's pushing them aside and he's moving on. Now, I wondered back in the day if this could actually relate to more than just one other person and might relate to earlier troubles the band had and, sort of personifying them as an individual and saying, you know what, we're going to forget about that. But I think it's most easily and most literally read in relation to an interpersonal relationship, maybe romantic, but maybe just like a professional working relationship. And the essence is that the narrator is done with the excuses and the attempts at reconciliation that the other person is making. He's not going to answer their calls. Any letters that have been sent, he's putting straight in the bin. He's done with it. And it sounds like he's been burned before and so on. There's lines about like, the things your so-called friends are saying, like, I'm not going to listen to them. I don't remember exactly the phrasing, but it's essentially that. And back in the day, I thought maybe it's like his friends, like, warning, like, the friends of this other person were warning the narrator, hey, he's or she is actually not to be trusted and so on. But he initially was like, I'm not listening to that. I'm going to trust this person, but then got burned for it, and that's why he's so critical. But then I came to see it as the other way around. It might be the friend saying, hey, he really wants to talk to you, or she really wants to talk to you. She's trying to reach out. Maybe you should listen. Give her or him the time of day. And he's saying, nope, like, I'm just not going to listen to that. I'm like, my tomorrow starts right now. Tomorrow starts today, and I'm not looking back. I'm not going back to that. So I think it's a desire to move on, start a next chapter, and close the book on this other person's involvement. And I do think if you just take the title by itself, I love that sentiment, Tomorrow Starts Today, because it's always tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow. And whether you're talking procrastination or just the unwillingness to put in the effort now, I think there's an inspiring sentiment. Tomorrow starts today. Like, if you really want tomorrow to be different, well, then you have to change what you're doing right now. You have to change what you're doing today. In any case, it starts with a quote. I wonder if this quote is, because I'm thinking like the first Rise Against album, they quote Jack Black in, what is the movie? I'm trying to remember the movie, but it's like, are you ready to rock? And I wondered if "We're putting the band back together" was a quote from the same film. I don't think it is, but it sounds like a sample. It doesn't sound like one of the band members, I think Glenn is the lead singer, it doesn't sound like him saying it, so I think they took that sample from somewhere and then it goes into the track proper, which in the context of them being back on the streets, having reformed, we're putting the band back together, there's a bit of meta reality there. So let's give it a listen. This is 88 Fingers Louie from Back on the Streets 1998 on Hopeless Records, and the track is Tomorrow Starts Today.
Putting the band back together.
Short but sweet. It really is fantastic. And as I said, I think their songwriting, both in terms of lyrics and composition, had matured and gotten even better than it was in the earlier years by this point. And yeah, I love the progression of the track. I like that section when it goes into that slightly more syncopated rhythm, and you get that vocal, which I don't know if that's still Glenn or if that's actually someone else in the group. The voice sounds a bit different, but there's also like a filter effect on it, and I enjoy the rhythm in that section. And then I like the little flourish, stop, little flourish, and then like over, which like, you know, he's done with this, he's not going back to it, and then it goes in for the last final energetic conclusion to the tune. So yeah, it's fantastic. My brain, it's like on the edge of my brain what that sample, we're putting the band back together. I feel like I do know what that's from, and again, it's not whatever movie I mentioned. God, what is it? Is it Cable Guy? But it's not that movie that is sampled in that Rise Against track. It's like, I know it, but I just can't place it, and I'm sure at some point I'll recall, like after I shoot the video, which typically happens. But yeah, when I heard this album and when I started listening to it, this first tune is like, oh damn, like they sound even better than before, and I was very keen. Now again, it seems like they broke up not too long after this, so I would have to wait a long time to hear more 88 Fingers Louie, though it's funny because I think I got this 88 Fingers Up Your Ass compilation after I got Back on the Streets, though I think they were released in reverse order. I think this was from the end of their original run, and then Back on the Streets came after that. Sorry, Jer. So, yes, I do have everything in the early days. I don't actually have that. It's like 2018 or something, the So Long and Thanks for All the Songs or the Tunes, whatever it is. I don't actually have that album, but at some point I'll see if I can get it. But yeah, I think I've gone through maybe 3 tunes from this, so we'll definitely have to listen to more from this album. Shout out to the group, both, you know, the original arrangement and all the people who've been members along the way, and also, of course, shout out to the 2 guys who went on to be part of Rise Against, another band I'm very fond of. Let me know what you think of the song, and I will see you for the next one. Peace.